Indeed, a word of welcome is most appropriate on this Welcome Back Sunday. It's an opportunity for us to think about this new year. It's always an opportunity to look back a little bit, but sort of rededicate our spirits and our energies to this parish that we know as home. It's also Shared Ministry Sunday. Diane is going to be speaking during our announcements to say just a bit more about what our shared ministry is all about. But today, let's just sort of focus and concentrate on what it means to be together. Paul's letter to the Romans is a very succinct reminder as to exactly why we choose to come together as a faith community, as was beautifully read by Tom in Paul's letter today. Owe nothing to anyone except to love one another. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no evil to the neighbor. Hence, love indeed is the fulfillment of the law. In that reading from Paul, as succinct as it is, it says everything as to who we are to be and what we are called to. It is a message that we hear over and over and over again. And still, we attempt to get it right. I think the effort is important. We're always trying to learn what that means to love. In the end, we have faith, we have hope, and we have love. And indeed, the greatest of these gifts is the gift of unconditional love. You can run, but you can't hide from that fact. However young or however old, we are called to that gift of unconditional love. A great reminder as we gather on what we have come to know again as Welcome Home Sunday. If you are a Lutheran, you would remember this as again, Rally Sunday. We begin anew with a reminder of the inevitable challenges that come with being a faith community, attempting to be relevant, to be vibrant, and to be faithful in a larger church that is as divided as our nation on many levels. A church membership that is often underwhelmed by the leadership of the larger church and its lack of courage and compassion. I believe it is important to name what some of our challenges and our successes are and how we face those as a community of St. Joan of Arc. I think one important thing to note, we celebrate our senior members, of which I definitely see myself as a part of. It's important to note we are an aging parish. We celebrate our seniors, and again, I certainly include myself in that. The truth is we're an aging parish, a considerably aging parish. And I know that because I do a lot of farewell celebrations here at Joan of Arc. I celebrate a lot of funerals. It's something we don't always want to acknowledge. But indeed, it is something indeed to challenge. It's also something to note. What will that mean for us as we continue to grow older? Who are the young ones coming in? On that note, we also celebrate our new members that have found a home at St. Joan of Arc. I'm told they had a breakfast for the younger families today down in Hospitality Hall, and apparently it had a lot of people there eating a lot of pancakes. That's a good thing. So we didn't see them because we weren't there, so we don't always know that. But it's a very promising thing to note that indeed we have young members. And we have new people who show up here every single Sunday. The question would be, we welcome you wherever you are on your journey. Do we, at the sign of peace, after we've kissed and hugged and shook hands with all of our buddies in our 5-foot radius, do we step out of that as we have seen that person forever and ever and ever, and I have yet to say hello? That's a big part of being a welcoming parish, is to not only say hi to your buddies, but to think at this moment about that person who you probably can see either the back of their head or they're sitting close. Have you said welcome? Have you said hello? Have you let them know who you are? That's an important ministry. It cannot be overlooked. As we welcome new people, the message is oftentimes this from those coming here. I was on my way out of the tent, if you will, or out of the church, and I found myself at home here at St. Joan of Arc. Or, I have been out of the tent, out of the church for a very long time, and I found the courage to come this far back in. That's what happens when we as a faith community decide to keep the light on and the door open to all people. It is a draw for many people who seek a place in the faith community. It is most appropriate on this Welcome Home Sunday to be reminded of our mission again as a faith community. Despite the many challenges and the disruptions that we share a call, each and every one of us, to be a prophetic voice in the larger faith community, as well as in our divided nation. As surely as love is the fulfillment of the law, so too are we called to be a light in the window that can only reflect welcome wherever you are on your journey, without exception. Without exception. There is no time like the present to speak truth to power. We can afford to learn from our brothers and sisters living in the third world. There has always been a long history of needing to discover the meaning of their faith, again, in the third world, and their purpose in faith, at the same time living in most uncertain times. The third world finds its faith in times of scarcity, in times of societal unrest, where in fact a disrupted life is the only type of life there is. That's just a given. Life is disrupted. We go crazy when we find grubs in our grass. We think that is the ultimate disaster. We need to learn from the third world. Many of us have seen in Africa where true joy and a vibrant faith are more readily identifiable as a result of not requiring to have all of your stuff, as again your source of security, and it's what you identify as your joy. We need to offload to get to the very essence of what matters. A story that I have shared here before on one of our early delegations to the townships in South Africa. One of our women in the delegation was walking, as we all were, with this African woman. We were on our way to fetch water, which was quite a journey. Quite a journey. The woman in our delegation was explaining to the African woman, as the African woman was talking to all of her friends and neighbors and checking on the kids and seeing how everybody was, the woman in the delegation was trying to get her attention and explain that in America we have faucets in our kitchen, and we have faucets in our bathrooms, and we have faucets on the outside of our house. So we might have all these faucets, so We find ourselves not having to do this. And the African woman turned to her and said, "Oh, that must be very lonely for you. That must be extremely lonely for you." Lesson learned. The ability to be a prophetic voice is more immediate and more compelling and has a way of changing hearts when your world is reduced to you and your relationship with God. We pause to remember our family and friends in Morocco. Over 2,000 people who lost their lives in that small African nation as the walls came tumbling down, their life unended. They will survive. They have their faith, and their faith is readily available to them. As we begin this new year, it may be important for us as individuals and as a parish to ask a few important questions. What truly matters? All kidding aside, what really matters? And do we think about that? What do I choose to leave behind? What have I held on to for far too long that absolutely nobody cares about? And if we're quite honest, maybe we don't even care about it. What can we let go of? What do I choose? How do I choose to nurture and enhance the life that I live? Am I always looking for an opportunity to be able to experience a deeper richness in my life, to experience more love in my life? As a prophetic community, we are obliged to try and change hearts and minds, to bear witness to God's mercy and justice, even in a nation, as I have said, and in a larger church that is most often turned upside down, resistant to change, and rarely gives us a reason to be hopeful. Those are exactly the times that we need to find hope within ourselves and to go forward. Pope Francis has recently stated that some conservative Catholics wrongly ignore much of the Church's mission and reject the possibility of change. The Pope went on to express his dismay at, and I quote, "a very strong, organized, reactionary attitude opposing him within the United States Roman Catholic Church, one that fixates on social issues like abortion and sexuality to the exclusion of caring for the poor and the environment." Our Holy Father, the Pope, continues to say, "I would remind these people that backwardness is useless. Doing this, you lose the true tradition and you turn to ideologies to have support." In other words, I say, ideologies then become your faith. There can be no silence or cowardice in the presence of organized hate, and all the usual suspects we know. Systemic intolerance on so many levels. Homophobia, pervasive racism, unconscionable violence, fear of deportation, degradation of our Mother Earth. The list goes on and on. On this Welcome Home Sunday and every day, we are called to a love that dares to resist and all that debases the image of God in our neighbor, and in ourselves, and in our environment. we are called to a resistive love that is unkind to anything or anyone. In this resistant love, I do believe God is truly, finally praised in the midst of resistant love. With the guidance of our Pope Francis, may we always be found as a parish community to be in good trouble above our eyeballs, to know that we have every opportunity, as was mentioned in our welcome today, to be in good trouble, to be persistent in justice. I close with this brief reading from L.R. Knost, K-N-O-S-T. She's an author, a feminist, and a social justice advocate. St. Joan of Arc. Do not be dismayed by the brokenness of this world. All things break, and all things can be mended. Not with time, as they say, but with intention. And so, Joan of Arc, come. Love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. Joan of Arc. The broken world waits in darkness for the light that is you. Amen.